Okay, 5B looks attractive. I've marked some that answers it in a slightly odd way. And the question was, evaluate the policies that a government could use to shift the long-run Phillips curve to the left. What some people did is they literally just kind of said, these are the policies, and evaluated them, without evaluating whether or not or how effective they would be in shifting the long-run Phillips curve to the left. And whilst the question doesn't directly say that, I think it's true by implication. So I think what you've got to be saying is, if you literally just talk about policies, you're going to struggle to get past about sort of 13, 14 out of 20, I think. What you've got to be saying is, here is unemployment, here is inflation, here's the long-run Phillips curve. What are the policies that will allow the Phillips curve to be shifted from LRPC1 to LRPC2, and how well would they work, and might there be any side effects? And to reduce the Phillips curve from LRPC1 to LRPC2, what that means is that we are trying to create a situation in which it's possible to have lower unemployment without an increase in inflation. And you've got to be clear about why your policies will allow unemployment to be reduced without inflation rising. And that's going to be because the NAIRU, or if you prefer the natural rate, it doesn't matter too much. The NAIRU, or the natural rate of unemployment, has been reduced. But it's the central part of each time you analyse it is going to say, how is it that these policies will allow the long-run Phillips curve to be shifted to the left, and then talk about whether they do so, and whether there are side effects. So what's going to allow this to, what's going to allow this to happen? It's going to tend to be, for the most part, labour and product market reforms. So we said that the NAIRU is the balance point between firms and workers. Well, some of you talked about the idea of the natural rate of unemployment being made up of kind of structural unemployment, that type of stuff. It doesn't matter. What you're saying is, how are we going to allow unemployment to fall without inflation rising? So for me, I would talk about, the first thing I'd talk about is kind of labour market reforms. So I'd talk about trying to weaken, so things like decreasing trade union power, allowing, I'm not saying these are a good idea, allowing 0 hours contracts, making it easier to hire and fire. These things are going to, reduce the NAIRU. It's clearly going to be possible for unemployment to fall further without inflation, because even if unemployment falls, once these changes have been put into place, it's going to be very difficult for workers to force through higher wages. So that's the way I would phrase it. And then you can talk about, well, is it going to work? It's not that easy to reduce trade union power. It may be politically difficult. It may lead to industrial action and so on. Just because it's easier to hire and fire, given the state of the labour market in the UK at the moment, maybe firms aren't going to do that. And you could talk about the impacts on inequality, fairness and all that type of stuff. What some of you did instead is you kind of said, well, to reduce the natural rate of unemployment, we need to do things like decrease structural unemployment by focusing on occupational or geographical unemployment. And that's, immobilities. And that's absolutely fine. As long as part of that you're saying that by doing this, what that means is it's now possible, because people aren't stuck in the wrong jobs or they're not stuck in the wrong parts of the country, now when aggregate demand rises, unemployment can fall without inflation, hence the long-run Phillips curve has been shifted to the left, it's been improved. But unless you're talking about how that trade-off has been improved, you're going to struggle to pick up the analysis marks. That's the problem. And if you look at your answer, and you find that you're not kind of saying, and this is how the policy is going to shift the long-run Phillips curve. This is how, this is why it is possible for unemployment to be lower without inflation. Then that's why you haven't got the mark that you were hoping for. Another way of doing it, so some of you just went through types of unemployment and kind of said, look, these are the policies that would improve the NAIRU natural rate, and this is, and these are the side effects. The other thing you could talk about is you could talk about product market reforms. So that's another thing that would be inclined to reduce the NAIRU, because what it does is it leads to an increase in competition for firms, and that makes it harder again for inflation to get established. it makes it difficult for firms to increase prices. Therefore, they'll be more resistant to wage increases. And that's things like kind of deregulation of markets, to make it easier for new firms to enter, or kind of becoming a more open economy and reducing barriers to international trade, privatization, to create competitive private sector firms. Those are the sorts of things that might work as well. And again, when you evaluate them, it's kind of will there be side effects, or how effective are they going to be? But as I say, the big thing that I noticed on that essay was that people weren't really answering the title as it was set. They kind of reinterpreted the title for their own purposes. And there was too little reference to how the long-run Phillips curve was going to be shifted by these policies. And too much kind of avoidance of that as a concept.